Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler. Back in October of 2013, Agape Child and Family Services started a partnership with the Achievement School District. To help tell us all the details of that partnership is David Jordan. He's the Executive Director of Agape. Dave, it's good to see you.
Byron, thank you. Good to be with you again.
It's been some time since you've been here. We met at a pastor's gathering of several hundred pastors recently at a luncheon.
Yes.
We sat together and we thought, hey, we got to catch back up.
Yes, very good. Thank you.
For those maybe new to hearing about Agape, what this ministry and the work that you guys do, the services you provide, just kind of in a nutshell, why don't you recap what you guys are all about?
Oh, sure. Agape is a Christian-based ministry. We're 45 years old as a ministry. It's hard to believe, Byron, this is my 20th year. Actually, this month is 20 years that I've been the executive director. We serve, a lot of people would say, I know Agape. They're the foster care adoption group. Well, that is partially true. For 25 years, that's exactly what we did. For the last 20 years, we've expanded, stayed in the same mission, but we said if we move upstream and begin working with kids and families before they go into foster care, then we began doing that, working with homeless families who are at highest risk of coming into foster care. So now we serve 30% of all the homeless families in Memphis. None of those children in 15 years have gone into foster care.
Okay, what is the definition of a homeless family in our community?
We use the federal definition. So families who are 7 days out of home or right at the brink of going out of home, having no place to stay, which could be in a car, could be in a shelter. I mean, it truly is literally homeless.
And what percentage of homeless families do we have in our community?
Memphis has about 200 to 225 families at any one time that are homeless. We are
that fit in that definition of homeless you just gave me.
That's right. And most often you're not going to see those families and those kids on the corner of a street where you'll see sometimes individuals there. And so they're kind of an unseen group. And so we are providing housing, wrapping services around. Churches are engaged and involved with us. We have a 95% success rate of those families going into their own permanent home, 100% rate of those families remaining together. Many of those families coming to know Jesus or reconnecting to Christ. Employment, so life overall, wrapping life overall for them to be engaged back into community.
That's really exciting. What about adoption? That's still, a main part of your work too.
It is. So when kids enter into foster care because of abuse, neglect, families unable to care for their own children, we work with those children in family foster homes. Our first move is for them to be cared for within their own family system, if that is at all possible. When that's not possible, then adoption becomes the permanent family option. But where we have evolved to, Byron, is really growing and saying, what if we can minimize the number of kids coming into foster care? And so our ministry to fit families in transition for homeless families, and then moving upstream even again back in 2008, saying, let's go into the communities where these families, where these children come from, and let's go to where they're at. And so I know we're going to have more conversation around that, but really going into those impoverished and under-resourced communities.
I mean, you guys are really being proactive in the work.
We're trying to do that. This is 31 years for me in this field. God brought us here 20 years ago. And so the vision, the picture he's giving us is just kind of how you described. In Memphis, we have under-resourced, impoverished communities, especially in apartments throughout the city, public housing having gone away for the most part. And so a significant disconnect for many of our youth and our families in these communities. And so trying to go into them, trying to be Christ incarnate, just as Christ would go into those communities. What does that look like? Doing it in partnership with many others.
Okay, now the Achievement School District that we're going to talk about here today, why was the Achievement School District chosen specifically to enter into the partnership with Agape?
Well, some quick background. When we went into these communities, and we call it Power Lines Community Network, and so just if you had the imagery of power lines in community, power lines connecting community with resources and services the community says they want and they need. So we've used data that would drive us to these communities, specifically apartments, who are at higher risk in many of these communities. So Whitehaven, Hickory Hill, Frayser, and Raleigh. Well, one of our core beliefs is that you've got to ask the people that live in those communities, what is it you need and what is it you want, opposed to coming in assuming what they need. So we do what's called community cafes, sitting around a table with food. What is it you need and you want? Well, in Frayser, about 3 years ago, we were asking that question, and the community in those apartments said there are three major things that we need. We need help with safety because there's gang and gang-like activity. There's domestic violence. There's a lot of violent kind of matters going on. We need help with education, and we need help with work, with jobs. So the loudest of all that, all three were loud, the loudest of all that was education. And so within Frayser, if folks are kind of aware of the Achievement School District or ASD, they're the group that is responsible in the state of Tennessee to work with the bottom 5% performing schools. And so any schools that are in the bottom 5% in terms of how they're performing, ASD, in partnership with Shelby County Schools, is focusing on those schools. So I went to Chris Barbick, who's the superintendent, said, here's what the parents are telling us. Chris, what should we do? Chris said, David, turning schools around is our business, but there are so many life matters in the communities that we can't. There's no way my teachers can do all of that work. I said, you know what, Chris? What Agape does is not doing education, but we wrap ministry, wrap services around families to walk life out. And so could we partner? So we embedded staff that we call connectors that connect relationally and then begin walking life out with the students and then going back working with their families in the apartment. And
that's what really intrigues me most about this whole program, David, here is the partnership not only includes, as you mentioned, the children in Frayser, and specifically Westwood Middle School.
That's one of the schools.
One of the schools. Yes. I know it's grown, but you started out 2 years ago. Westside was the school. But not only the partnership with the students, as you mentioned, but also their families.
Yes, yes.
And that opens up a whole new basket of opportunities, I'm sure.
Yes. You know, in my field, sometimes we can be very child-focused and say, let's go save the child. Well, being child-focused is very appropriate, but the child lives with the family. And so looking and working with a family is very important. And another part of the conversation not always talked about is that family lives in a community. Research shows if there are negative dynamics within a community that equate to 20 to 40% for that community. So poverty, if it's within 20 to 40% of that community, many of the negative dynamics of that community will directly impact that family. And so we're saying, let's focus on the child. Let's be in the school working with those kids. Let's go back and work with their family in those apartments and surrounding areas. Let's wrap ministry and service around them, and let's bring partners along. So we have churches in those communities. We have 100 nonprofits that have agreements to bring their services to those communities, so being site-based. And so the whole premise is go to where the people live, hear their voice, and bring service and ministry alongside, but do it in a way that they say they want and need it.
David, as this program evolves, how do you chart your progress?
It's a great question. Most often we have these conversations and we tell stories and we have anecdotal, but are we moving the needle? Agape is using a community database system, and so we are tracking on and working with groups like Seeding Success and others that are saying, let's look at very specific data to say, are we moving the needle? So the two of the primary areas we're looking at is attendance. If you're not in school, you're not going to do well in school, generally, and it's more likely you're going to be involved in negative behaviors somewhere else. Within Shelby County, attendance is a significant matter, especially in impoverished community. And so we're in 4 elementary schools. We're in Westside Middle. We're in MLK Prep High. They're all feeder systems in prep. Very high level of attendance issues. And so we're tracking on that. We're also tracking on grades and conduct. And so part of our relationship with ASD is we have a data dump every week into our system, this community database system, so that my connectors on the ground have a dashboard to say, here's my caseload and my kids. Where were they at school? How are they doing? What are the grades? What are the behavior? And so we're tracking and keeping up with that and then measuring how we're doing.
And just real quick, we ought to applaud the work that you guys are doing because, I mean, you're getting these additional schools because of the success rate after the first year. I mean, the first year that you got involved with Westside, they're in Westside Middle, they're in Frayser. They came along and said, hey, will you take on 4 more, you know?
Right.
So I want to applaud you, and I think our community should applaud, too, the hard work your team has done to see this happen.
Thank you.
What are some of the challenges in developing these relationships with the students and with their parents? I mean, is there reservations involved?
Always. Just like in any relationship, you've got to earn trust. And if you're in some of the communities that we're in where trust is violated or has been violated, it may be from a violation within the community. It may be a good church member that meant well and didn't follow through with their mentoring relationship. It could be a whole range of things. And so there is a building back of relationship and trust. And so not every family welcomes us with open arms. And frankly, rightfully so. We have to earn that. And so often there's a crisis, there's something that happens, and the family will see us and say, okay, I'm ready. Can you help us with that? We also have a lot of credible partners, and so we partner within the Frayser community very specifically, and that's helpful. Part of our premise is being where the people live. And so over half my staff office in the apartments and surrounding communities that we work in. And so they're there every day. We've got a range of ministries and programs that come in. Some that Agape do, a whole bunch of partners that bring those services there. And so we earn the right by saying, we mean good to you. We're listening to your voice, and we're bringing to the table what you say you want and you need, and we're walking that out with you.
Okay, now, is all the work primarily focused on the school campuses, or are you actually getting to walk into the homes of these students?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our first move has been be where the people live. And so being in the apartments or surrounding areas. And so part of our, like Alco Management is a great partner with us. And so Frank Jemison, one of the expectations as we go into apartments, and we're in 10 apartments right now, is that we would have 1 to 2, maybe 4 units available to us. So my staff office literally in those apartments. We also are going to the natural environments where the kids and families go. School is obviously a natural place kids go. And so we have kids in 27 public schools within Shelby County, within the communities that we work with, Frayser being one, Whitehaven, Hickory Hill, Raleigh as well. And so we're in the schools as well.
Did you have to increase your staff members, and
Yes.
What about training your staff for these roles?
Yes. And so the team in Frayser, there are about almost 25 staff in Frayser working in this model that we've been talking about. The training is very important. One of our beliefs is that we need to use models that are evidence-informed or evidence-based. And so there's research behind them that says if you do the model this way, it is effective. It still allows you to have room and flexibility to move around, but this is a quality model. And so we use an evidence-based practice around attendance. And so it's a model that comes out of Minneapolis in terms of making sure kids are at school and working with parents to do that. We also use an evidence-based model. It's a wraparound, the Vandenberg wraparound model of how you wrap services around, how you wrap community around families and walk life out together.
That term is kind of a catchphrase for even today. A lot of communities talking about wraparound services.
Yeah.
Give the specifics of the wraparound services you guys are offering.
So it's the parent, the family is in the center. And so they truly are the center. That sounds very like, well, sure. Most often, they're not always there. So they're in the center, and you ask them what they need and they want. And who do you want in your community to walk with you? Well, I'd like pastor down the street because I'm connected to that church. I'd like my auntie. I've got a great relationship with this school teacher, but I need somebody who it might help me with jobs. I have nobody in my network that would do that. Or I need help with education. Or I need, and whatever, fill in the blank. And so one of the issues in impoverished community most often is a breakdown of having a network around you. If you and I, our car goes down, it may be an issue for us to have to figure out financially, but we got somebody we're going to call, or somebody who's going to call somebody to get you in to get your car fixed. Right. Well, it's the same kind of principle. And so we're wrapping that around them, wrapping community around, and then walking life out, bringing resources. And so we have 100 nonprofits that have agreements to bring their services to those communities. We're working with about 70 churches within all the communities that we're at for them to come alongside. So we have about 1,800 volunteers serving in some kind of capacity. And so that's part of the wraparound.
Okay. What about including the families, the parents specifically, in helping their students so they're not just feel like they're just receiving a handout,
right? But
they're actually maybe receiving a hand up, if you will.
We use the language of walking alongside most often. And so it's not the hand up, the hand out, but it's walking alongside. The parent is the parent, the guardian's the guardian, and we honor and respect that. And so we engage them in the school. They make the decisions about their child. They make the decisions about what resources and services they want. We ask them to volunteer, to be a part, to kind of giving back, if you will. We have families that are doing that. And so we are trying to help grow the leadership development within those communities because bottom line, it's their community. It's not my community. So we have ownership with them, but we truly respect and honor the people of the community because it is theirs. And so how do we walk life out with you?
And they're taking the ownership.
Yes.
They are reaching out. And
yes. It varies in terms of what level and how deep and how wide. But this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so we're already seeing good data, good experience in terms of moving the needle. But we got a long way to go, but we're willing to walk that out.
What are some of the long-range goals of these partnerships?
Well, Agape is right now going through a strategic planning, and I've challenged my board with, let's imagine a child is born, which there are children born this year. In 18 years, when that child becomes a major, anticipate graduating from high school, where is that child? Where's that family, and where's their community? We're not going to write an 18-year long-range plan, but if we're thinking out a generation, how does that impact what Agape does this year, next year, the year after? And so part of our growth within the Power Lines Community Network model is, yes, education is a significant focus. So we're going to continue to grow in that. Early childhood is very critical. Birth to 5 years of age. Got to get to that point of life in terms of that kind of focus. Workforce development and jobs. So you graduate from high school. Where are you going vocationally? Are you going to 4-year school, 2-year school? Are you getting training? What about the trauma issues within the community? The matter of violence, the matter of poverty, just the level of trauma in many of the communities that we serve in. You've got to be able to address that, mental health, et cetera. So we are trying to kind of holistically serve. Agape is not going to be providing all those services again. So it's through partnerships of people and groups who provide quality services that we can walk life out together with families.
So you really sense that the partnership here, again, with the Achievement School District fit pretty nicely in the overall mission of Agape.
Yes. And so our belief is if you mean good and goodness to community, we will partner with you. And so we have a range of partners. We have faith-based partners. We have secular non-faith groups. We work with the government. We work with schools. We work with Shelby County. I was with Superintendent Hobson just a couple of weeks ago. And so we work with any of the institutions and groups that where our kids and families are at. And if your intention is good and goodness, we're going to walk life out with you to be able to serve if it's good for the families in the community.
David, what are some of the other organizations that you feel could benefit by starting similar partnerships with other schools in our area, for example?
You know, I think there is a movement within our community. I mean, you've got Neighborhood Christian Centers, NCC. You have, a range of other community-based organizations that are in community. As our community has changed with public housing changing the way it has, with the movement of the poor in the last 15 years in Memphis, Shelby County, there is a movement to going into communities, and you'll hear the word you mentioned a moment ago, wraparound services. And so I would say churches who are in those communities, being aware of the dynamics in your community. Are there parachurch organizations, whether it's Agape or somebody else, to be able to walk alongside with you? Be very aware of the issues and the needs within your community. Did
you look at other models in other communities and cities before you started this?
We did. Matter of fact, I think last time maybe I was on, we had Dr. Jeffrey Canada for the Harlem Children's Zone from Harlem here in Memphis a year ago, actually almost exactly a year ago. And we looked at that model. It's a very effective model in Harlem. It's place-based, so go to the place where people live, wrap services around them. And so that's an evidence-based practice, and we looked at that, and then we've brought some of these other pieces together that I mentioned earlier.
How about the teacher and staff morale? I mean, since you guys have been involved in the last 2 years, I guess we can probably talk more specifically about Westside, since you've been there longer now, because I know they need a lift.
I tell you what, my wife is a trained teacher. My hat is tipped to teachers because it is a hard job. We're in a city where third grade literacy rates, 2 out of every 3 children in Shelby County are not reading at third grade literacy rates. They're not reading at grade level. And so, I mean, there's significant work to be done. So it's been a great partnership. You have, with any large system, it takes work of how do you be in the school, partnering with them, how do we not take away academic time, but we're really a resource and support to them. And so we have had a great relationship. You mentioned Westside Middle. We're in 4 elementaries there in Frayser. We're in MLK Prep High. And so it's been a great partnership. We're in several Shelby County schools as well in Hickory Hill. And so we're growing this model within the public schools that we're serving.
There's a lot of people that try to go into low-income communities, and some of them have good intentions, and some of them had, selfish intentions to be able to serve people. It's so important that they, again, building that trust level and factor, knowing that they can really depend on that. You're there for the long haul.
Right.
You're not there just as a flyby.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a real challenge to nonprofits, to churches, to groups who have good intention, however you might define that, who may get a grant, who have some money, and they go in to do something for a little while and they stop doing it. I've come to believe in my 31 years of history and working as a social worker and now leading an organization for 20 years, if you don't have a plan to sustain and continue, you have no right to go in that community, period. And so church or nonprofit leader, whoever you are, if you're coming alongside and you're invited first into that community, then you need to be worthy to remain there long term if you have something of value. We really hurt communities. Frayser is a great example. There's been too many organizations come in and out of Frayser and use them as kind of their client caseload and not really be there long term. And that really hurts that community.
Yeah, that's a great word there, David. And I think the potential here, and specifically for the Frayser community, to see the success that's already taken place and what we believe to take place in the future through the program and these partnerships could really not only change the Frayser community, but be an example that could possibly, impact communities all over our country.
Well, there's a lot of good work going on. I know you mentioned Westside. It was the 9th grade academy 2 years ago that we began working with. I am told statistically they were the worst performing 8th grade class going into the 9th grade. This was 2 years ago. At the end of that school year, they were the top performing 9th grade class relative to where they had come from. So what all that means, we can get pats on the back and all that. Bottom line, the kids can do it.
Yeah,
the kids have the ability. The parents, the families. We had 2/3 of the kids and families in that school hooping and hollering at a celebration when all this was. It was just the most beautiful thing. So they can do it. And so, because sometimes we give up and we say, "Oh, they can't do it," or we come up with whatever excuse. It is on us to ensure that systemically we've not created roadblocks that do not allow the kids to have the access and the resources to be able to do what they can do.
And sometimes it just takes that somebody who cares to come along and say, you can do this, and I want to help you do this,
Right.
It makes a lot of difference.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting, David, how government agencies, in this case, Shelby County school system, are leaning on faith-based agencies and churches to do something that they don't seem to be able to do themselves.
Yeah, and to that very point, I think I was just telling you, I just came out of a lunch where I was with Mayor Luttrell and General Amy Wyrick out of the DA's office, and that's exactly the message they said. We are government. Here is our role, very clear about our role, and we want to partner with the faith community, and we need to be able to help around matters like attendance, around matters of impoverished communities. And we were at Brown Baptist, where Pastor Orr, who I know has been on this show a number of times, Pastor Orr is a great partner with Agape. When I told him about Georgian Hills Elementary School in Frayser, and last year it was one of the lowest, if not the lowest performing elementary school in terms of literacy as it compared to any other elementary school in the state of Tennessee. I told him that, and Pastor Orr said, David, I want that school. They adopted that school, and they had 40 to 50 volunteers every week going into that school using an evidence-based literacy support model that we were supporting with, working with University of Memphis and some others. And that school had a significant turnaround in 1 year around literacy. And this is within the school system where literacy is the major issue that is not being addressed. We're not cutting the corner. We're not turning the corner here. And they had 9% increase in 1 year. That is huge in that school.
When I mention faith-based organization like Agape Child and Family Services you depend on support, donations, and events like Heartlight that's coming up pretty soon.
That's right.
To be able to partner with our community, find ways to share the work and the ministry through events like Heartlight and even be on our show here. But that's coming up in November.
Yes, it is. Matter of fact, it's the Saturday before Thanksgiving, so November 21st. Real excited having Ellie Holcomb, who is obviously a great singer, great heart, speaking gospel through her words. And not only her, we've got our husband, who a few folks know of as well, Drew Holcomb, and the neighbors. And so we got both performing, and so we're really excited. It's going to be in Hickory Hill. It's actually going to be in a warehouse in one of the communities that we serve in. It's going to be kind of a grit and grind, intentional. We anticipate 2,000, 2,500 people there. And so it's really, so the bottom line, it's to help support what we're doing, help people get engaged in the work that we're about, if you want to do that, or helping others get engaged in other platforms to be able to serve for the good of our city.
If you've never been to a Heartlight event for Agape, you're missing out because you always find the most creative venues, and this is no exception here with the Holcombs coming and this warehouse. I love what you guys are doing. How can we get tickets? How can we find out more information?
You can go to our website, agapemeanslove.org. So just go to our website. You can call our office, 901-323-3600. But the best way is to go to our website, agapemeanslove.org.
Wow, David, this has been so much fun to talk about Heartlight, of course, and also about the great work that's happening in the Frayser community here, particularly with this partnership and what you guys are doing, your staff. I mean, we need more people in the community to partner with you to at least pray for you guys, because I know there's a spiritual side to this that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about. That we need to pray for that, the support as you guys minister in Christ's name. Bottom line, that's what you guys are doing.
Jesus' prayer was for kingdom to come on earth. I read it as kingdom come in Memphis as it is in heaven. And so it is spiritual warfare from a physical, from an emotional, a psychological, educational, spiritual. And so it is holistic ministry, walking life out. And so, anybody listening who would say, well, I'd like to be a tutor or mentor on a weekly basis and walk into that school, or I'd like to come alongside a family, or I'd just like maybe do a plug-in, plug-out. Like I say, we had 1,800 volunteers this past year. We're really trying to be a platform for churches who want to adopt a school, adopt an apartment complex, or a class who would say, we could help out in this kind of way, or an individual would say, you know what, plug me in. I want to go read with a third grader, and I want to help turn the needle, move that needle around literacy.
That's right. I love that. What excites David Jordan most about what you do?
It's funny. I tell folks that this is, as I mentioned, 31 years in the field, 20 years at Agape. I am more excited now than when I came 20 years ago. First of all, when you're doing what you believe God's made you to do, and then you're in the flow of God's Spirit about what you're to do as a group. And I have real energy and courage about our city and the goodness of our city. We've got pastors and church leaders, other organizations. So I'm a half glass full guy. Boy, I see all the terrible stuff. And my job, my work sees that all the time. I still see it half full. So I believe we're in the right place. I think we're asking the right questions. I think we're trying to do the right kind of things. We're not perfect. We try to keep growing. We're using data and information. We're listening to the voice of the people in the community to get better. And just, being in partnership with you, being able to have a voice around this is a huge matter just for people to say, I didn't know about that. Well, once you hear that, God's Spirit works through that, then to convict or move others to be involved in His work.
All the information we've been talking about, plus a whole lot about the services that Agape Child and Family Services offers, is available on the website, which is
www.agapemeanslove.org.
Agapemeanslove.org. And I love that little phrase you guys are connected with. Agape does mean love. And agape, the word in its original language, is that Greek word
agape.
Agape.
That's right.
Which means
it means love.
It means the deepest, richest love that only God really can provide.
Yeah,
change your heart.
Yeah, it's a love that's beyond our selfishness, beyond anything that we want, need, or feel. But it is wanting the very best for you because God loves you, and I'm going to try to live out the love that God has for you.
Well, David Jordan, I always enjoy getting together with you and having you share about Agape.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it very much.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I do appreciate you stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. Hey, we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye now.